Howdy y'all, DJTJ here with an AOS on Tabletop Sim video. Now, this video is going to be in a series. I'm going to take you all the way from the first video, which is this one, talking about the good, the bad, and why I use Tabletop Sim to play AOS. Then I'll discuss installation, getting it set up, all the way through tips and tricks. In the description of this video, you can click on the links if you're looking for something more specific. So if this one doesn't apply to you and you're ready to use Tabletop Sim, then go ahead and look at the links and go to the video that you need. So the first thing I really want to talk about is why would you use Tabletop Sim to play Age of Sigmar, or for that matter, any other tabletop game, tabletop miniature game? And well, the first biggest reason is you can play from home, and I know that the current situation with everything being locked down, it's a big deal for some people, and I know a lot of gaming stores throughout the world are closed or have a limited capacity. So for those of you that are really into AOS or Star Wars Legion, 40K, Infinity, and you're just really not able to get out to the stores because of these restrictions, this is it's a close proximity to that, I guess I would say. Um, so you can play from home. That is the number one reason. Um, Next, it's a good way to try a new list. So even if you're able, or maybe this is, you're watching this a year from now, and there is no more restrictions and the virus is not a thing. It's a good way to try new lists without having to purchase the models or invest a lot of money in purchasing new models, building them, painting them, such as that. So maybe you've played you know corn for a little while, and you're like, hey, I want to play some. I want to try out a Demon Prince or something, but I don't know if I want to drop the money to get him. So you can play a couple games with that model in Tabletop Sim, and there you go. I know for me, the Chaos Sorcerer Lord on Manticore, I ran 3 or 4 games with him to see if he would work in my Zinch army, and I kind of decided against building and painting him because I just didn't like. I thought he would do what he would do on the table. He really just didn't do. Um, Another good reason to play is you can try new tactics. So, if you're a competitive player, maybe you want to go to tournaments and try different things. Well, maybe there's some combinations that you haven't used before, or maybe you would use your screen and cavalry a different way. So AOS on Tabletop Sim is a good way to work out those tactics and just figuring out, hey, what's the interaction between these guys? Is this a good combination? Um, I think as a competitive player, especially if you enjoy going to GTs and such as that, that it is a very good tool in the toolbox, because you can not only you get to see and hone the skills of your force and army, but you can have friends play other forces that are popular. So maybe you don't have OBR in your local club. Well, you could have a friend, hey, pull up this OBR army. I just want to see how my army, interacts with that and how I have to counter them. So from a tactical standpoint and competitive play, I think that there's a lot of benefits to playing this. And two, it's not the guilt of, hey, let's set up, spend, 30 minutes to get to the game store, 45 minutes to set up a game, and a turn into it, one army has smashed the other ones. It's not that big of a deal. You can reset this game very quickly. Um, Another reason to play AOS on Tabletop Sim is you can teach new players this way. So if you have a friend or someone new to the hobby that's interested in saying, hey, like I would like to play, but maybe their schedule doesn't allow them to get to the game store that much, or maybe they just want to start small. You can get it to give somebody a lot of basic understanding of how this game works on Tabletop Sim. Is it going to be the real thing? No. Are they going to get that the hand-eye coordination to know, like, oh, that's a 6-inch charge, or I can sort of see the board? No, you don't get all that, but you can get the fundamentals of the rules down using this game. um, Another reason to use Tabletop Sim is play with friends that have moved or have a different schedule. And I know it's happened to me several times where I have a friend that plays in the local game store that had to move for work to another city or a state. Or you might just have a friend that gets a new job and maybe your schedule isn't compatible anymore to making it up to the local game store at their gaming hours. So you can use this to still get those games in with your friend. Um, I want to touch on that too. Once again, go into that high level of competitive play. If you're in Australia and you're one of the top players and you want to play, one of the top players from the US or the UK, this is a great way to do that. You can play some really high level competition and get those opponents that really know what they're doing on this software, and that really wouldn't be feasible without traveling around the world. Um, the last reason too that I sort of think about the positive or the reason to use this is some people just don't have access to a local game store. Um, I mean, living here in Houston, we have 3 to 5 game stores. It's an easy drive that you could go play Age of Sigmar at. But I do know that there are people that live in areas that maybe the game store's an hour away, the closest place, or maybe they don't even, they live in a state that just, it's not even feasible. It's a 2 or 3 hour drive to get to a city with a game store. In those cases, you can use this to sort of fill that hobby need, that playing need that you might have. So now that I've discussed some of the reasons why you would want to play, I'll go into what's good about this. What does AOS on Tabletop Sim, what does it do right? The first one is the cost. It's minimal. It's under $20 to buy Tabletop Sim, and all the sprites or the models and all that. That's all free. Now, there's a big caveat to this in that I'm not factoring in the cost of a computer, the internet connection, headsets, things like that. If you're coming to play AOS on Tabletop Sim, I'm willing to bet that you're already a gamer of some sort, or maybe have access to a computer, and you're a person that you're not going to buy a laptop and a headset and go get high-speed internet just to do this. So if you're having to do all that, then yeah, it does get expensive. You're going to look at a $15 to $2,000 investment just for that. However, if you're a normal player, a normal gamer, most of us have this equipment anyway, if you work from home or if you already play video games. So I'm just thinking of that as a sunk cost. The cost is around $20 to purchase the game, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. One of the other positive features is the movement. So when I say the movement, it can be very precise. You can move models exactly 3 inches. Okay. So some of the movement characteristics are super nice, super precise. If you have your unit set up exactly the way you want it to be, you can move many models at one time, as many as you can highlight. So things with movement, there are some very good things with moving your models around the table. Another good thing of Tabletop Sim is you can pause the games. So if you're in the middle of a game and there's an emergency come up, or maybe that you only have a finite amount of time to play, it isn't like a normal game of Sigmar at the game store. You'd have to pick up everything, you have to go home, and that game's, for all intents and purposes, done unless you have a dedicated area in your house to leave models out for multiple days. And with Tabletop Sim, you can be in the middle of a game and your buddies, you got to head off to bed or something, you can save the game and, start playing again the next day or whenever. You can have online tournaments with Age of Sigmar on Tabletop Sim. I know that there's a group in Dallas that has done a couple of tournaments with it. Now, it's different. There has to be a lot of sort of different guidelines put in place. There's a lot of other things to think about and factor in, but it is doable and it is feasible to run an online tournament if somebody was willing to do that. Another positive thing about AOS on Tabletop Sim is the size of the games. They can be any size. And if you just wanted to play some small little skirmish game real quick, no problem, throw them out. if you wanted to bring 10,000 points of Chaos Demons to play 10,000 points of Iadeth Deepkin, well, do it. There is no restrictions on size and number of players. I want to say goes up to 10 that you could have in at one time. Um, Another positive thing on that is that me and an opponent could be playing a game, and I can actually have other people in viewing the game. They can come into the game to either assist me to learn the game, to help out. So you can invite other people in and give them certain access or restrictions. They can literally have as much access as you and move every piece of on the table, or you could just limit them to viewing only. Talking about viewing the game on Tabletop Sim is not only can you bring other people into the game to view it live or interact with you, but you can stream these games, you can record these games. So if you have a channel or if that was ever an interest to you, streaming these, it's definitely doable. It's not hard, it's easy. Um, so I think it's pretty awesome because the biggest bar to entry to me to ever filming games was that it's very hard to film a real battle report. I've tried in the past, and it's not the easiest thing in the world. And there's a lot more editing involved. If you ever wanted to do battle reports, this is probably the easiest way to do that. And finally, another good point is you can use Tabletop Simulator for other board games. Now, that's what I want to make really, really clear to everyone is that Tabletop Simulator is like a shell, and you can load in any type of tabletop game that you want to. Tabletop game, board game, all the way from Chess Monopoly, all the way up to Accident Allies, AOS, 40K, whatever you play. There is crowdsourced workshops to bring in those models, and some are pretty advanced. I always hear the Legion guys talk about how theirs is really nice. Um, so for $20, unless you can get it on sale at a Steam sale, Tabletop Sim, you can literally play hundreds, if not thousands, of different games on this. So don't think that that cost is just to play AOS. If later on I had to find a group of people that wanted to get into some, Accident Allies or Akuza or something, I could do that, and I could use Tabletop Sim to do that. All right, so we've discussed a bunch of the good points to it. So let's talk about some of the negative points, some of the bad things. The very, very first one, the most important one, is no true social interaction. I want to make it clear that my philosophy and my enjoyment of the game is going out to local stores and clubs and meeting people, making new friends, making those social connections. That to me is the best part about any role-playing game, miniature game, board game, is going out and interacting on a personal level with people. Now, with Tabletop Sim, you don't quite get that. Um, you can use, Discord or something to chat with people. You could even use other software to do video chats while you play this game. But at the end of the day, you're playing in a room at your house and they're somewhere else. So you don't get a true social interaction that most of us that play AOS enjoy going out and doing. So a while ago we talked about how great the movement was. Well, not all the time. There is some wonky movement. So there is times when, if you notice the jump there, these models or all these sprites have hitboxes, or they have invisible parts that we can't see. And on these 2D models, which there's 3D and 2D models, so we have the sprites here that are just 2D. These work pretty good together, but sometimes you have a 3D model and they do not want to stack right. It is hard to get them close together. Now, that was a pretty good job, but if you're playing with some of the larger models like some 3D Nagash, and we had a lot of trouble with the Bellwind Vortex, the moving those around the table can get very cumbersome, especially if there's a good amount of terrain. So there is times where moving things is not exact, and I have really felt that when we get to the pile-in step in this game, that it becomes very tedious and it is not as easy as on the tabletop. So general movement, running, moving, even the charges to an extent, but once you get into pile-ins and stuff, me and the opponents usually just say, yeah, we know who's in there, but because you just can't move all those models exactly the way you want them. The final negative point that I really want to discuss on this is that this is not officially sanctioned by Games Workshop. So all of these models you see here, these are crowdsourced. These are sandbox. Someone has made these in the workshop for other people to use. And that's great because that's a great community. There's a large community of people doing things like this, and that's awesome. However, there is nothing official on it from GW. And that could be bad because you never know if you invest time, effort playing this game, and then one day there's a lawsuit, and then all of a sudden, poof, there's no more Age of Sigmar. And then also on it, if a new army comes out or a new model, that might take, days, weeks, or maybe even months to get fully made into sprites for you to use. So that is the biggest negative, that you don't you don't know, since this isn't official, it's not officially a licensed product, that when it would go away. So I hope that I gave you some insight into why to use Tabletop Sim to play AOS, some of the good points and some of the bad points. So if you're interested in doing this, check out the other videos that'll walk you all the way through uh, the basic overview of installing it and to getting a game running. Y'all be good.